All right, guys, we're inside the building right now, and as I stated before, the internet here is terrible, so I pre-recorded this, but this is as live as it can get, as I recorded this video about an hour and a half before our live tour. Now, you noticed as we came inside that we went up a lot of stairs, so we're above ground right now. And Jews, we bury our dead 6 feet under. We bury our dead in the ground. And that's because ash to ash, dust to dust. We want to return our body, which was made from the earthly elements, our soul being godly material, goes to Shemaim, goes to heaven, goes up above. But our bodies, earthly material, we want to put it back in the ground where it came from. So the burial plots over here cannot be exactly where our ancestors, our forefathers and foremothers are buried, but what we do have is the grave marker in English known as a cenotaph, or in Hebrew, it's Zion, right? It's Zion, Avraham Avinu, the Zion, the grave marker, the cenotaph of Abraham, our forefather. And it's literally just inside this room right here. You can see it a little bit over here, and interestingly enough, you can see that there's a bulletproof mirror over there, and I can see inside over there, there are literally Muslims on the other side who are also praying here to be close to Abraham, also their forefather, especially now being the month-long holiday of Ramadan, a month-long holiday of Ramadan for the Arabs. So this is a very busy time for the Arabs to be praying here as well. And throughout the entire building here, we have the cenotaphs of these 6 grave markers of our forefathers and foremothers. We have Avraham, who's over here, and we have his wife Sarah, who's buried over here. You can see the grave marker here, that Zion, Sarah Amenu, right? The grave marker, the cenotaph of Sarah, our foremother. But interestingly, is in this room, you can see there's Arabic inscription, okay? And we mentioned earlier that Hebron was conquered by many, many different peoples. It's one of the reasons why the building itself, its structure built like by King Herod, lasted for so long, is unlike in Jerusalem, where it was destroyed. Here, the people just wanted to take it over. Now, you can see this interesting architecture over here, this red, white architecture over here. Now, this was built by the Mamluks, as we talked about in the 13th century, roughly about 700 years ago. And they had this very, very particular way of building. And you can see this in the Old City in Jerusalem and different parts around Israel, of using this red stone, white stone, red stone, white stone, and obviously a very, very beautiful style of architecture, and lasting a very long time, still around right now. And who were these people? These people were known as the Mamluks who built the structure over here, this red light. And the Mamluks, very interesting people. Believe it or not, they were actually kidnapped. What do I mean kidnapped? During the second jihad, the great jihad, where the Arab nations coming out of the Middle East conquered much of Europe, they actually stole, they snatched, they kidnapped, they stole young children, the age of 3, 4 years old, from their families, brought them back to Cairo, which was the head, was the center of the Arab people at that time, and trained them to be like samurai, to be these ultimate warriors in order to protect the Sultan, in order to protect the throne of Egypt at that time. Well, when the emperor, when the Sultan died, they realized that they were the ones with the guns, and you had a military coup. Okay, there was no guns back then, but they were the ones with the weapons and the know-how of how to use them. Nobody could defeat them. They took over these white Europeans who were Muslims. They were trained as Muslims. They believed in Muslim ideology, and they believed in one God, but they were born as Christians in Europe, and they were snatched and kidnapped and trained as warriors. And in fact, they were some of the best swordsmen and cavalrymen in the history of mankind. Everybody knows Genghis Khan, who, the Mongols, who almost conquered the entire known world. They were defeated by the Mamluks here in Israel, just outside of Tiberias. And they're the ones that are going to build this whole section on top of the building. They're going to put a whole nother section on top of the old section, right? You have the old section underneath me right here. And then underneath this, you'll have also rooms, and underneath that is where the cave is located, where the tomb of the patriarchs and the matriarchs are. But they build these pillars that you can see over here, and the entrance, and the halls in which the cenotaph, again, it's just the cenotaph, the grave markers of our ancestors and our forefathers and our foremothers are located. And just like we had the mezuzah. When we came in here, every door has a mezuzah, and this one's really beautiful. It does say Gan Eden, and it says Yaakov and Leah, because this is the hall where Yaakov and Leah are buried. And so you can see over here, again, just like we saw in the other hall, Zion, Yaakov, Amenu, right? The Zion, the grave marker, the cenotaph of our forefather, Yaakov, who was also known as Israel. He was also given a second name, Israel. So we can see the importance of this place. It's not just our forefathers. Even the name Israel, was the name Israel come from, is also buried right here. And this is why Israel goes to great lengths in order to protect this area. And it's so important to us of who we are, because obviously this is the patriarchs and the matriarchs who are buried here, but also where the name Israel comes from is buried right here. Yaakov is also known as Yisrael. And then just like with Abraham, and just like with Sarah, the twin cenotaphs, here you have the Zion of Leah Amenu, right? Of Leah, our foremother. Now, Yaakov, Israel, had two wives, right? He had Leah, and there was also Rachel. And Rachel died in childbirth and was buried between Bethlehem, and Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. And her grave's still there and is visited by hundreds of thousands of people every single year, just like the tombs over here are buried. Now, if you're counting, you know that we've only visited 4 cenotaphs, but there should be 6 grave markers. The other 2 being, the middle generation of you, the child of Abraham, Akedas Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac. And Isaac and his wife Rivka, Rebecca, are buried on the other side here. Now, it's closed to us, and these are bulletproof windows over here. It's closed to us all but 10 days out of the year. And those 10 days is during the Chol HaMoed period, the in-between days of Pesach and Sukkot, as well as Chayas Sarah for that Shabbat, the Parsha that talks about the actual burial of Sarah. But we can see a picture over here. This is what they look like, and I can actually hear the Arabs and the Muslims on the other side praying right now. I can hear them on the other side of this door. And from here, there's a very famous opening and a shaft. You can see this girl being dropped down through this. Roughly, I think it was probably almost 40 years ago maybe, was dropped down in here, and some pictures were taken, and you can actually see the cave and some of the ancient pottery and the materials, and you can see here's a diagram of it, of where the actual tomb of the patriarchs and the matriarchs were actually located. And of course, as we mentioned before too, underneath that, the double cave, it's a double cave. You have the one cave of patriarchs and the matriarchs, but underneath that, and according to Jewish tradition, is where Abraham, is where Adam and Eve, right? First man and woman. What is it? First man and woman, right? The first breath of godliness into our earthly bodies was given. Not to say that there weren't animals, literally, who looked like us, like Homo sapiens, but they didn't have that soul. They didn't have that godly soul. They didn't have that part of Hashem, of God with them inside. And so Adam and Eve were the first ones to be given that. And so this is the inside of the tomb of the patriarchs and the matriarchs. It's really unbelievable. But let's head out right now, and we'll wrap up the tour. It's been a pleasure bringing you guys in here. Let's go.